Hi, welcome to the New Human Intelligence. I'm thrilled that you're here to join us today as we talk about what's next for us in Intel, insights work, as well as not knowledge work. And this is a part of the Decision Insight series. I'm Cynthia Cheng Correia, organizer of these webinars. And my bio is here, and I won't go through this so that we have time for our discussions, but I'm happy to answer any questions. And my LinkedIn profile will also be at the end here. But I do want to just emphasize that my role is typically seeing what's not seeing, surfacing those things, and helping to educate, advise, coach, and train people in novel practices for decision support. And I come into this at the intersections of a number of different disciplines and including information science, knowledge, obviously intelligence, and behavioral science. So I hope that you won't hesitate to ask me if you have any questions about where I come from or some of the things I'm referencing. And with this, I am going to introduce and thrilled to introduce my colleague, Claudia Clayton. And Claudia, on to you.
Okay, so basically, I'm pretty uh, enforced in research, intelligence, and strategic direction. I've worked with many different clients, avenues, people who are in CI, not in CI, over my past jobs. And right now I'm doing something called Pinnacle Insights. We're moving a little bit not away from human intelligence or CI, but we're also becoming a little bit more flexible in terms of research and strategy, because that's a bigger area now that AI takes up quite a bit of the CI process. I have been past and vice president of the CI Fellows. I'm not anymore, so I'm much freer. It's a lot of work. My company before this was called Expedient. I started in consulting across different sectors in the market, primarily around competitive intelligence and product marketing and product development. I worked as a VP at Citibank, Citicorp, GE Capital, and AMA. My background early on was very much in product development and marketing. So I bring that to the role of actually working with clients on CI. I think that my best capability is developing insights from competitive intelligence, a lot of it being human, and being able to get to the point of what the client should be doing or not be doing to outmaneuver the competition. And that's something that we're very gung ho on AI right now, but some of these other insights are important to actually be able to make the decision. So that's what I do. And I'm going to do a little more extra things like consulting and coaching with this new company.
So welcome, Claudia. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you. And so this is a under Decision Collaborative, and it's just a little bit of a description about what we do here. And again, I won't go into that because many of you already know what we do. And for those of you who don't and want to learn more, information is at the end. And so our outline for today. First, we're going to get into an introduction and background because there is some to cover, because we are diving right into human intelligence, and even for those of you who've been with us in the first couple of webinars, who've been with us already from the beginning, covering the scenarios, and then from there, excuse me. Looking at more deeper aspects of the Intel process. Now we're zeroing in on this, but we still need to look at some background. So we'll do that, and then we'll go into reviewing the human intelligence assessment from Claude that I have featured in the past couple of sessions, but we're going to focus, Claude actually looked at the whole of the intelligence. We're going to focus on human intelligence specifically in this session. Then Claudia and I will discuss the current and novel opportunities that are coming up and maybe some next steps that you can be taking. And then we'll go into some questions and wrap up. So without further ado, so some of you already have been with us here, as I mentioned, especially if you're listening to this on a recording. We're in past discussions. We've already talked about AI scenarios, some of the potential broad directions in which it's going, some of the signals, the key signals to focus on. We didn't get granular because it wasn't a day long or a 3 day long, session, breaking down a scenario, but it highlighted some key points. And from there, we looked at also how AI is affecting intelligence practices. I won't have those slides up today, but we do have them at the ready. So if you have any questions about those, I can certainly call them back up. And we see AI as a creative disruptor. So it's not going to say necessarily eliminate things wholesale, but it will be very uneven. It will be rather jagged. And the key is how we manage it. And that is the creative part. So we're also seeing too that we've discussed in the past how we can manage some uncertainty, noise, and gaps. So I'm assuming these things here as we go in. And we're also taking the perspective that it's not AI versus human. This is very much about more of a blended, integrated, augmented, however you want to view this, approach to it. And at various times, it will have different mixes of AI and human. And the key here is, how do we adapt? How do we shape? How do we evolve along with this? And always with an eye, as you can see in blue there, on our stakeholders, because there's a shift in how they're perceiving. They have their perspectives, right? Demand for speed. There's an increased competition for their attention. That competition is also from the people selling AI. So they're not paying attention necessarily to Intel best practices as much. There's also a mixed understanding or an uneven understanding of what AI is and what now insight work is. And so that's particularly challenging for us to cut through that noise. And then uncertainties as novel practices combined with traditional perspectives. And we've got some people who are stalwarts hanging on to traditional ways to go. It's a way to go. AI bad. Others, AI is the way to go. Traditional is dead. I tend to hold both views in a way. And I'd love to hear yours as well. And I know Claudia does as well, because we have been having these conversations. And then looking at what's influencing stakeholders, what are their emotional drivers as well. So we've covered these things in the past. This approach is a part of the series continuum, as I mentioned. And we're going to assume that you understand AI literacy and you also understand insights, intel, and knowledge functions. If any of the terms that we use are unfamiliar to you, please, by all means, ping us in the chat, follow up, and I'm happy to clarify, because I don't want to go above, but I also don't want to talk too much about fundamentals, so that we can keep looking at what's ahead, what's next, and what we can do to support this as a community. So, and we want to focus on key changes. So it's really important that we have that focus, and that's the approach. So with that, today, we're exploring what is the state of human intelligence, how will it evolve, how do we identify and expand our opportunities, and importantly too, here you see in the blue, what is the human element in insights work? Because the way we're defining human intelligence is shifting in this conversation. It's not as we know it. It's not the interviews necessarily or trade show work. It's not limited just to that. We're expanding this, and this is based on conversations that Claudia and I have been having. So we're going to dive into this. And here we've got the AI and human intelligence. I'm going to do a review here, and then Claudia and I will get into the Claude assessments that you see referenced at the bottom there. But we see here in the current state of human that this is actually a continuum of a long tail that really for over a decade, probably two, there's been a bias for open source methods and digital tools. So where we are with AI and human is not much different than where we've been in terms of these tools. So when people are conducting intel, we tend to go to open source. We're not necessarily thinking holistically about the primary and secondary. We're focused more on secondary. And so, when digital tools come in, there's more of an emphasis on that as well. And so this is a part of the psychology of how we've been approaching Intel. And so I think that's important to recognize. And there's also, in terms of the overall function of Intel, we're grappling with AI vulnerabilities and opportunities throughout the Intel cycle. And so that's not a surprise for anybody, even if you didn't participate in our first two webinars. But we're also seeing that within this too, it's very uneven in terms of the way the adoption is happening, not just with respect to the specific intelligence functions, for which there are just simply different tools and approaches, but even the way different organizations and different individuals approach them, because skill sets, mindsets, budgets are very different. And we're also seeing, differences too, and changes in stakeholder preferences, as I mentioned, a lot of misalignments, distortions, and even uncertainties that's affecting the way we work. And the current state too is that there's still a push in some circles to lean into traditional practices. I don't disagree with the fact that we need to have that foundation. That is vital, especially as we are looking at incorporating new AI tools, even redesign. What I'm not hearing in the conversations is the risks and missed opportunities and over-indexing on that, because that's not aligning with the AI transition. So you have people who might be embracing that and they're falling behind. You also have within that cognitive and practice traps, because you're not adopting or being able to shift between the traditional and the AI mindset. And it's not just one is not the extension of the other anymore. It really is holding a couple of disciplines in your head. And people not keeping up with leading edge practices means that there's a lack of preparation. And I'm seeing this all around me as I'm having conversations or trying to have conversations with some people in Intel. I can't have those conversations about what's next or even what's happening because people are not keeping up, and they're not necessarily then prepared to set the stage for what is coming. And that is actually pretty soon. And I'm not trying to be, lean into the hype or be dire about that. And as much as the people who are excited about AI are excited about AI, Gen AI, over reliance on Gen AI means that becomes commoditized intelligence. There's nothing really unique. It's trained on what everybody theoretically has access to. So on the AI side, people who are really excited about that and leaning into that, there are some very critical gaps, and particularly tacit knowledge gaps that are happening within that practice as well, or that shift in practice. So I occupy that space in between. And I think, Claudia, you and I have had conversations about that too, right? How the importance of that. And then just to round this off before I turn this over to Claudia, we are also seeing now the current state means also looking at the next generation. So many of you have seen in the news over the past couple of months talks about Anthropic's Mythos, which is the next level, and how that basically, jailbroke, and then it was throttled again and caged in limited fashion. But they just released Fable 5, which is the reined-in version of Mythos. And early word is that Fable 5, and I haven't done a deeper assessment on this yet because it's early days with Fable 5, but and I'm still observing what the feedback is, but it's a game changer for people who really know how to do this and can incorporate this into the Intel process. Combine that with where OpenAI is going and their pursuit of personal agents, or the super app. They're actually moving away from chat now. So you may have seen some discussions over the past few days too, that somebody on the inside declared chat is dead. So they want to move away from that chat interface as their focus into creating personal agents that can help us with work-life matters. Raises a lot of questions, but I'm looking at this from an Intel perspective. And so what these super apps mean. And so we can expect something like that next year. And so maybe even later this year if they're really aggressive, because they're going IPO. And then there are world models looking even further. And world models are really going to shift things. For those of you who've been following digital twins model specific ecosystems or specific situations like a manufacturing process, or a city or a product design. But world models are going to be broader than that. And they are going to be able to look at scenarios and play around with that. And that really gets into the Intel territory. So that's the current state that we're dealing with. Claudia, I want to turn this over to you now. I kind of set the stage here. What are your thoughts? And where are you with this?
Well, things have changed greatly, and the AI piece is a strategic part of the process now. Companies are creating their own programs and that sort of thing. But it's a little bit like what it's always been, which is clients would decide, what they didn't know, and they'd put that in a proposal and they'd say, here it is, and you get me all the answers. And I'm really, stripping that down. But today, I also go back and do something that makes my time more efficient, which is use AI and see if there are things that they missed or that I'm supposed to focus on now and try to get the other information. So I don't think it's ever going to be that they have everything they need unless they just decide that's what it is. And that can be very dangerous, actually. There are a lot of different things that can happen within the system, the information that's put into the system, etc. So while I think it is like the best thing since sliced bread, and I use it every single project, it is not the be all and end all, because there are so many other factors. There's recency of information. If you get the right person in the right company at the right time, you're probably going to be able to bring back some information that has not been put through the system. Because it just was decided, for example. Accuracy is always, you have to deal with that. I had one project recently where the AI put me completely off the track. And fortunately, I caught it and we could not look bad. There's understanding, when the information goes to the client, do they understand it or not? Maybe they misinterpret it and then send it to me to get more information, and it's the wrong information. So it's really an evolution, and there is more of a personal investment when you're going to the human side. There are also biases that they may take away from the AI that they have provided to themselves. It also isn't necessarily going to help you beat out your competition, because they can probably get a lot of the same information, right? You want to stress test the AI information, both in a very clinical way, but also does it represent the truth on the outside? I think that the people who have human skills are able to put enough information in to make it much better. But I would not say that we're it's not a flash in the pan. We're going to be doing less of the project than we did before. But okay, it doesn't really matter. Humans do have skills that are outside of what you can create in Intel projects or analysis. And I think we have some slides on that. So, so I'm not going to go into that really. Training, you need to be trained well enough to know whether, this is worthwhile or not. Do you need it or not? I think that it's a different role. It's not a dying thing. And I think that there's going to be a shift back a little bit after they go through this process of, just all I'm going to do is AI. And then there are going to be some gaps. And they're going to say, you know what? I think I still need a little bit of human intelligence here because I told my boss that it was this and it was actually that. So, it's slowed down a little bit, but uh, there is still a room for that and analysis. There are people who can do analysis and people who can't, and um, so that's sort of my point of view at this moment. Did I miss anything?
No, and I think it's a good segue to this, our next. And so what you're going to see here, what you are seeing here is a static snapshots. So this is basically two screens. And those of you who've been with us before have already seen this, where you've also seen the OSINT one and you've also seen the analysis one. But I want to key in on, so this is the background to this. So some of you know that I've been tracking how AI has been impacting different Intel processes, with the Intel process and specific functions and tasks. And earlier this year, rather than doing it manually and traditionally, I should say, and just populating a table, I also turned to Claude and asked Claude to do it for me using the same thing, scale of 1 to 5, using a rubric. So basically, it's scoring the capabilities, and you'll see that in a second. But what you're seeing here on the left is this, as I said, this one's focused on human. This is the broad human support category. So this is the overarching, and then this is the overarching score. And this is for AI in its current state, and Gen AI specifically. This is anticipated 1 to 3 years where Gen AI may be and how it may be supporting Intel. And this is the human benchmark. And so you can see that it's not all fives because humans don't excel at everything. And then here are just some notes. This is on this side, and these are just specific tasks that we're seeing broken down. On this side, so I was keeping a couple of tables. And so then this side is a breakdown according to specific types of generative AI. So here, large language models, small language models, multimodal, and a lot of this is really blended now with the LLMs, but I still have it broken out. Commercial AI tools and agents. I don't go agentic because that really is a collection of agents. So I'd rather just focus on sort of more of the nodal aspect of this. Again, this is looking at overall support, and then this is the aggregate score, and then breaking it down by specific tasks. So what Claudia and I are going to do now is we're just going to do a bit of a deeper dive into this so that we can, there you go. Yeah, so we do a deeper dive into this so that we can walk through this with you and just highlight some of the things that we're seeing and what it's telling us and what we find missing. And we're going to do this a bit, and then we'll get into some of the other points. So this won't be a super deep dive. This is just really to highlight some aspects. I do want to note, very importantly, this was done in Sonnet 4.6 version. I did not do Opus because I wanted to use a version that anybody has access to. Right, so you can try to play around with this type of thing yourself, and I did not use Fable 5. This was from May, because I also I haven't run the next one yet. I want to keep it consistent to what we've been looking at and what we've been discussing in past sessions. So really, not much has changed materially except Fable, but the verdict is still out on that. So this is basically the scoring mechanism where 0 is incapable, then you have 1 nascent, 2 emergent, 3 capable, 4 proficient, and 5 is fully capable. And then you can see here, and by the way, this is just the way I've got it created is an HTML output. So you can see if I can toggle between OSINT, needs definition, analysis, but we're going to focus on human. So here, Claudia, when you saw this, what was your takeaway? What were your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts were that it seemed pretty accurate to me, even without doing any research. But I think it really does show that there's a progression of the capabilities that are technology. If you look at identifying candidate sources from public records, it's now a 4, it's going to be a 5. And, we're not the best CI professionals doing projects. We're not the best at that. So we're going to be a 3. But some people, might be working with a small company and they don't have some of those resources. I think what's really important are the ones where you're looking at, I think I'm looking at the same thing here all the way down, mapping and visualize. Okay, so these upper things, these are going to be taken over by technology for the most
This
part.
here. Yeah, so you're
Except,
referencing, I'm sorry, I just want to make sure. When
yeah,
you say upper things, you mean up here.
up here, yeah.
Yeah, up here. Okay.
Okay, so when we
Yeah.
get down below mapping and visualizing source relationships, we are looking at 2 things in particular: direct source engagement, elicitation, and trust building, and assessing a source motivation and reliability in real time. Those are usually the icing on the cake. They're the things that are really the breakthrough that we can deliver, because you're dealing with sources, which you'd have a better recency, a better understanding. You can rule out biases and sort of stress test what the information is. So we've had many technological revolutions, okay, and this is just another one, and it actually benefits us because the cost of doing CI programs will go down for clients. Maybe more people will use it, and so it's not necessarily a death knell or anything like that. I do.
Not for human.
Go ahead. Not for human. Not for human.
Well, if we handle it properly, though, right? Because
Yeah.
if we continue to neglect it along that long tail, it just means once again, and we saw this in the KM wave, and we saw this in the dot-com boom, technology and the technology sales pitch is going to displace human intelligence as a function top of mind, right? It's that those marketing pitches are going to work. And so this is where I think this is a very important conversation for us to have, right? For us to envision, well, understand where we are, envision what we've been missing, and begin to counter message that to say, look, this is what the human element brings, and this is how, not just in the way that we've traditionally done it, because a lot of it, as you can see here, like you said, in the upper clusters of tasks
Yeah.
here, it's going to basically render aspects of that of the human function obsolete, or at least it's going to be an enabler so that we spend less time doing those things and we focus more time at the bottom here, as you mentioned, right? Because the top tends to be more sort of AI proficient at least. So yeah, I that's I think that that's an important takeaway from this, is not to say that this is just, hey, this is how AI can help us. It's also how AI is changing the way we need to practice.
Could I just make one comment on that? I think also that it's going to create a situation where we have to teach this to clients, because a lot of them don't even know what we do, even though they've used us 7 times or something. But I think that educating and maybe not even calling it human, give it some other name and say, this is the icing on the cake. And if you don't get this icing on the cake, you're going to miss some very important things. And I've had that happen in 3 different projects recently. I was thinking that the AI was telling me what I needed to know. It wasn't. And I went down a path, and finally I figured out that there was no path. But I think the other part of it is, how you present it to them, that you show that it's not just a topic, it's the most accurate, usually the most fully worked out. And if you don't have that, you've just got what everybody else has.
Right. It's that commoditization, I think, for me is a tremendous worry
Yeah.
because we see AI producing product so rapidly in 2 minutes,
Mhm.
right? You've got something that looks like it's a finished product. And and so I think that with if you hold a strong technology bias, it's going to lend to this process an air of authority.
Mhm.
And I really want to lean into the fact that what Intel is about is to try to see what others are not seeing, to
Mhm.
try to surface what others can't. And so what we want to do is not to lean in more on the commoditized, or the commoditized aspects of it or what's publicly available, is to focus on those in between. So the way I see AI is that it the automations and the efficiencies that are built in, that are happening up here, are enabling us, are freeing us up to do deeper level human work that we've been neglecting. So, and
Yeah.
we can talk more about that because there are a lot of human functions that when I was starting out 30 years ago, we were actually doing. And now I would say that pretty much what we've been doing is more just interviews and trade shows. And a lot of the other stuff has fallen by the wayside. We've gotten less creative. We've become um, just a lot more, dare I say, intellectually lazy, even about the way we think about it. And part of it is also just generational thinking, too. In that I think folks that are coming up learning this, they're not learning human intelligence in a more holistic way. They're learning how to do interviews, maybe, right? If they're lucky enough
Yeah.
to read Ellen's book or, to, see webinars with you and Laura Young and Ellen and so forth. But they're missing out on some of those deeper aspects that we were trained on. We were actually formally trained on doing. So
Mhm.
I see those pieces missing, and I'm concerned that it's carrying over. But I also see this as an opportunity for us to fill blanks. I would like to shift this too. One thing I want to note about what we're looking at here is that it's one thing to focus on these individual scores and its summarization and its notes. I also want to note that I think that this output is also rather limited in the sense that this talks about the current state of human intelligence within the known Intel functions and cycles and practices with AI as as we understand AI, or as Claude understands AI to be out there. So there are a couple of notes to this. One is regarding the AI piece. This is reflective of AI capabilities. It's not reflective of what people are doing now. So most people I talk to are actually nowhere near these scores here, the fours and fives. They're maybe kind of operating at the ones and twos, they're nascent. And so they're not fully taking advantage of where AI is either. And that's a skills thing, it's a time thing, it's a budget thing, there are a lot of reasons behind this. So if you're looking at these numbers and saying, okay, I don't feel this way in my workplace, well, you and everybody else, right? First off, but what this is reflecting is that the technology is there to achieve this level. And I do see that actually. The other is that when it's looking at human intelligence, it's looking at human intelligence that I want to flag here. Let me just bring this one over because I was getting a little bit of a lag in my cursor's not, well, anyway. So human intelligence here is the direct source interviewing in a traditional way. Oh, sorry. I think I'm getting a little bit of a hiccup here. Oh, sorry. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I don't know what's happening, but actually, let me do one thing here because I think something is stealing my. Um, there we go. All right, uh, so when we're talking about this here, this is traditional human intelligence elicitation interviewing. when we're talking about the new human intelligence, what I'm looking at is additional skills that can also expand on this that you and I will discuss, skills and services that you and I will discuss, Claudia. So I do want to also
Mhm.
mention that too,
Right.
because I think that what these zeros here actually should be higher if we look at the expanded human intelligence support that we can provide. And a sneak peek would be, say, for example, if we do more internal human intelligence gathering, focusing on, say, folks who are externally facing or functional experts, people who are in R&D or in sales or whatnot, and we're interviewing them, this is where this number can bump up because we can actually use AI automation to create efficiencies here. So this is what I mean, when we're talking about the new intelligence, is we've got to reframe this, because even as Claude is reporting back, hey, for traditional, this is what the numbers are. When we start to think about missing pieces, missed opportunities, and what else can we do once we start to automate more and we free ourselves up and we have time to get to things that we have neglected, well, let's focus on what we've neglected. And we're
Right.
expanding into those new practices, and those new practices, because we're talking to internal people, we don't necessarily need to be focused just on one-to-one elicitation, because it could be actually a one-to-many, or there could be automated components. So we can talk more about that for sure, but I just want to highlight some of these things that I see here, that what this is telling me. And any thoughts to that, Claudia?
Well, yeah, I think that uh, there are a lot of smaller companies out there that maybe don't have as much AI sophistication. Also, you can differentiate yourself from the competition better if you're getting more information from wider sources. If everybody's got the same stuff and they're stuffing it into their AI uh, machine, they may all come out with just the same information or mostly the same. And then what does that really give them? It gives them some stuff, but it doesn't tell them, how can I stand out? I had one project where basically, if we had not been doing human, a very, very possible opportunity for them would never have been mentioned. So, and it kind of almost saved them. So, there are things like that, and so you want not to just be getting the information; you want to create extended insights for the client.
And this is where going to new areas of intel, that human intelligence that we've been neglecting, will also enable us to do that too. So as we wrap up this segment, I just want to move over and talk about the other assessment that I've been running, and this is looking at, as I mentioned, the specific types of AI, and not much surprising here. And Claudia, please feel free,
Yeah.
to comment. But I think we're seeing very similar patterns, right? In that the upper
Mhm.
portion of these functions, the tasks, tend to have the higher scores. And then we have, but this is where I also differ too, right? Permanent zero. And again, if we look at expanded human intelligence, where we're not dealing with external sources exclusively, we're dealing with either internal sources that are expanded eyes and ears, and or advisory groups that we have access to, that we've compiled in along different
Mhm.
functions in our own organization. These numbers start to shift because we can actually automate aspects of that, and that expands our human intelligence capacity. Then the person who is the human intelligence manager or the expert can then take the aggregate, or to look at the aggregate of this, and where there are some anomalies or some interesting aspects to the reporting that may be happening on a regular schedule, they can then do the one-on-one interviewing to get those precious nuggets of insights and intel, or leads, or early signals. So this is where our frame of human intelligence needs to shift as we're looking at this panel, as we're looking at these tools, because if we're looking at AI, even enabling us to automate up here, it also means that there's got to be changes if we are going to be um, expanding our value, or even affirming our own value as humans in the process, or in this Intel AI loop, um, to redefine or to reintroduce, or in some cases reintroduce, different types of human intelligence that we have neglected over the course of the past couple of decades, or we've been underutilizing over the course of the past couple of decades, as we've been focusing on OSINT and as we've been focusing on external interviews.
Mhm.
Yeah, thoughts?
Absolutely.
Um, okay. So I think at this point, then, if there are no questions or comments about what we're seeing here, uh, then we'll move on, to just doing the deeper dive, and you and I can just chat a bit more about some of these points. And I would love for the audience to, folks who are joining us, to weigh in on this. So, maybe spend 5 minutes, on this. So, um, so I mentioned Delphi panels and advisory groups. And just a note on that, we're going to actually, our next session is on that, because one of the things we want to do in this series is to start drilling down more deeply to illustrate um, how we can start thinking about these things. And
Mhm.
so, even if you have no background in that, if you have, start thinking about these novel, or in this case, we're revisiting, right? An existing tool, maybe with a fresh eye. Some organizations are already harnessing advisory panels nicely, but they're not necessarily doing with AI. And this really is one area in which we can expand in the new intelligence. Yeah. And so, so Claudia, how do you see being able to use the skills that you've honed and you've been using with external sources, right, with internal advisory panels?
Well, if you have a dedicated group of people, um, you can educate them on what you're looking for, and you can point them in the right directions, and be able to get information from the industry. So I think that's probably the major benefit. But I also think it solidifies the idea that human beings can actually be more innovative than an AI product. In other words, you're looking for interesting information, you're looking for better ideas, you're looking for how you compare to other people in the industry, and that I think that could be a really good opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we can certainly talk more about that. And I think also, I've got to say that the expertise that you have and that so many others have, on this session as well, in the extended community is, many of us have years and years and years of experience. And yeah, okay, AI is going to automate aspects of this. I also think that the new intelligence involves redefining that term, not just in terms of revisiting some underutilized resources or some missed opportunities. It's also in injecting that human perspective during the transition into Intel. I'm sorry, into AI. So as we are, say, maybe tactically introducing specific tools, the new human intelligence is literally to obviously analyze these tools from a human perspective.
Mhm.
Our conversations about human have not leaned into that enough. We've been talking about how we're defending conducting external interviews and so forth. That's what
Right.
we've been doing. But I would argue that one of the things we need to be doing in redefining human intelligence is to say, okay, we're going to use Intel on ourselves, right? We've got
Mhm.
the the interviewing, elicitation, collection expertise. We've got the analytical expertise. We've got the
Mhm.
process expertise. Now, that we are in the transition, let's take that expertise and we will put this into the planning, the design,
Right.
quality assurance,
Yep.
ongoing management, et cetera, right down the chain of these tools. And that's how we define the human in the loop. That is also another layer, and I would say a broader and deeper layer of human intelligence. So it's not, again, it's not just the interviews anymore. It's not just trade show elicitation. It's literally saying human intelligence is baked into the quality assurance or planning, design, quality assurance management aspect of these tools so that we can ensure that these tools are working properly. And here's where the where Fable 5 and Mythos comes in, and as well as the personal agents or the super apps and even world models come in. When we start to have these extremely robust tools that can do a lot more automation, a lot more cross-disciplinary
Right.
and design and analysis for us, and I say design because Fable designs software as well. Um, one of the things we need to do is to be sure that we minimize gaps. We're not
Right.
losing, we
Hmm.
understand the dependencies. So if we do this, what's going to break potentially? And what can we prevent
Hmm.
these things from breaking? Right? What can we prevent us from missing these things? We're not asking these questions rigorously enough. That takes process knowledge, that takes deep intel knowledge, not just AI. We're focusing too much on prompt engineering, learning how to prompt, learning how to do all these
Right.
little tactical things. And I've got to say, yeah, do that because that's how we learn along the way. But we need to not overinvest our time and energy on it. One thing that I've had a lot of people ask me, come in and can you do more prompt training for us, et cetera, et cetera. I've actually resisted doing that. My background is actually online search, right? That's how I got my start. That stuff is
Yep.
really native to me. Right?
Hmm.
I've deliberately stayed away from that, from doing the training, robust training in that, because things change too quickly. Every 4 months, there's a turnover in AI, in Gen AI. And we can even see that the same prompts don't necessarily generate very consistent results because underneath the hood, things are changing. What we need to be doing is reserving enough of our energy, focusing on preparing for what's next. And that what's next is looking to replace that human element. So my argument is let's focus on baking the human element into that process,
Exactly.
minimize risks.
We put it back in.
Yeah,
There
sorry, I
was
got in my soapbox there, but
no. It's the best idea because otherwise we're just saying, oh well, we'll still sell this over here. We can keep it. But I had one. I'm gonna try to cut this down to size, but we had a client and they needed to be able to compete with a giant, and it was like, well, how can we do this? And it looked pretty bad. Okay. But then at one point, we actually saw something way over here. And I thought, what about this? It's not anything anybody ever thought. And I did some research and they could do it. And so they actually were so happy that, because they were going to get put out of business, and it's a bigger tech giant, and I'm not exactly a tech person, but I could see that there was another outlet where they could compete. So I'm not sure. I don't know. Some AIs might have found that, but I'm not sure it would.
well, I
So
think
we have
you
to
touch on something
review.
interesting. Yeah, you touch on something really interesting because another conversation we've been having that I'm hearing, I should say, is people saying, well, AI missed this, AI missed that. I can't be entirely sure that it did. And I'll explain why.
Yeah. Okay.
Because what goes into it is most of us do not have the skills to be able to use AI robustly.
Yeah.
So is it a skills issue? Also, many of us are not necessarily choosing even the right AI tools for the job.
Yeah.
So are we necessary? So could that be the issue? So when I hear that, I'm actually breaking it down into a number of different factors, and I'm
Hmm.
asking questions about those factors. The easy answer is it's AI not producing. I'm not so sure about that because it's the way that it's whether or not we're skilled enough, and most of us aren't.
Mhm.
And I'm still catching
Right.
up. So I'm not putting myself above, right? But I would say that at this point, I'm probably above most. And I can still see that, okay, well, if I, try something a little different, or, or if I learn, something new, approaching it differently, going agentic instead of just using a series of prompts, right? Or, that
Mhm.
can also change things. So I'm not so sure that it's just that AI is failing, or that we just don't necessarily have,
Yeah.
we're not quite there yet. But to be fair, it's really hard to be there, because there are people whose full-time job is to master a particular LLM, and that is their full-time job. Most of us
Right.
cannot do that because we're doing a lot of other things
Right.
with our
Right.
jobs, to be fair. So it's really important for us to understand that what we see in terms of AI output is not what AI is fully capable of. Someone else, though, may have the resources to be able to harness that. That is a
Yeah.
competitive factor. When you've got a Unilever dropping $2 billion, right, on an R&D facility for just for AI, they're obviously going to be cracking more of the codes than, to that, uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
than most others. So I think that it's obviously the best efforts, but I think we need to sharpen our thinking about what that means, that about our interpretation of AI and our understanding. But I think we also need to then sharpen our thinking about how human intelligence fits in. And
Mhm.
it's not the way we've been doing it. We need to focus on the missed opportunities and resurrect those, because there are no great tools for those things, and right now it can be a competitive advantage, right? So that's one. And then the other is looking at the novel opportunities that it presents, and that is the human in the loop piece.
Yeah.
And we're not talking enough about how to bake that in, as we're even as we're attempting to defend human intelligence. We're not doing enough to define how we do that. And there is a roadmap for that, a generic one that I'm presenting, but there are also specific ones that individuals can develop within their own organization to align with their organizational objectives as well as other factors.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So at this point, then, do you want to bring up other points, or do we want to wind down, or do you have any other thoughts that
Do we have any questions?
yeah. So as we're waiting for questions maybe to come in too, I will say
Okay.
that we need to expand internal collection. I think that's one of the missed opportunities that we've had. Now we've done that with software. There's software
Mhm.
that does exist to collect intel internally, but we're not doing this systematically in a way that elevates the human element, and that then brings in the human skills to be able to
Right.
conduct interviews internally and so forth, right? And so we've talked about that. I also Another thought too that I've been thinking about, because this is how I operate, is being able to bring in more behavioral and observational practices.
Mhm.
AI cannot do that. So what we're
Yeah.
nowadays, if we're automating more, we can do a lot more in terms of image intelligence. We can do a lot more in behavioral intelligence, right? Anticipatory intelligence, geo intelligence, other types of intelligences, where we can add more of the human element. It's not just the traditional human, or traditional OSINT, as we've been thinking. We kind of tend to have this kind of weird bifurcated definition of inputs. There are
Right.
multiple other inputs we've been neglecting. The military
Mhm.
hasn't neglected it, right? Um,
Right.
I look to them. So they've never neglected the behavioral and observational practices. That is also another layer of the human intelligence we've been neglecting on the commercial private sector side, that we can absolutely expand to expand our value. And I look
Mhm.
forward to talking about this more in future videos and so forth, and
Good.
workshops, as we kind of get into that. But
Mhm.
that also taps into tacit knowledge.
Right.
AI, Gen AI captures explicit knowledge, for those of you who are coming
Right.
from the KM world, right? But tacit knowledge is really the sweet spot for us. And so the question is, how do we expand into supporting that And in defending the way we've been practicing human as the way to go, misses out on that new opportunity too. So I would argue that we can start to design new ways of capturing the tacit knowledge. So doing the
Yeah.
internal interviews is one way that we've been talking about. Focusing
Right.
more on advisory panels is another way. Baking humans in the loop and looking at the ways that we can help to plan and so forth. That is actually transferring our tacit knowledge into that process, not in an explicit way, but in a way that we're in ways in which we're guiding this. And we need to make this known to people who are helping to design this or who are leading the design of this. And we need to make this known to leadership who are driving the digital strategy in the organization, because they're not seeing the intel people and the expertise we bring in. We're not
That's a
making the
good
case
point.
as en masse that we need to be making. This is a tremendous missed opportunity times 100 in my head. Uh,
Yeah.
so, and then to that too, we can capture early warning better,
Yes.
right? This is really a part of the early warning session,
Yeah.
early warning uh, aspect, where if we're looking to enhance our early warning, it's that tacit stuff, it's the behavioral stuff, it's the weak signals. AI is not so good at that.
No.
So again, human intelligence needs to shift away from those, and we can take those skills that
Right.
you and others bring, right, and
Yeah.
bring it over. That's how we redeploy, and that's how we reapply these things to get more out of the process. So I'm sorry for
No, I think
but
I think that creates a bigger opportunity in that, we make it something different, we call it something different, and they will understand that everything they're doing is fine. I mean, great stuff. Saves time, efficiency, maybe finding little things that you didn't know as well. But I think, at some point you've got to get into, well, what else is there? What could we do? Creative analysis, validating the other information that's come in. And so I think we need to package up something that includes that and supplements and enhances um, the, the the ability for the company to compete.
yeah, there are a lot of blind spots, I guess is what we're trying to say, right? To distill this, there are a lot of blind spots. And so I think it's really important as Intel practitioners that we start penetrating those blind spots, so that we can help to expand the opportunities for human intelligence that have been neglected, or the new opportunities that we might be overlooking. Oh, so I think we've just lost Claudia, but hopefully she'll pop back in. So with this, as we wind down, I'm going to reshare we'll go back to the deck, and so that we can, yeah, so I'd like to go back to the deck so that we can then wind things down a bit here, as we're waiting for Claudia. And so with this, I just want to mention too that Fable 5 is going to change this, and beyond is going to change the way this looks. So this part will be evolving, I think, more quickly than maybe we had even thought 6 months ago. And so we've just been talking about the current and novel opportunities and next steps. So and we won't go into that, but I'm also putting up a couple of slides from last sessions where we talked about some of the expanded skill sets along these dimensions: technical, behavioral, communication, foresight, intelligence, insights, organizational intelligence, and systems thinking, along the lines of the human specialist, open source specialist, and insights management specialist. The insights management specialist is really what we've been talking about when we talk about expanding human intelligence into uh, the area in which we are baking ourselves into the process. And so you can see that the skill sets we need to start building towards a higher level in each of these dimensions. So I just want to highlight that again. And most of these, by the way, are not a part of standard training right now, because again, that's a mindset, it's a practice, it was a bit of a legacy issue that we're dealing with. So we're we have to redefine this. And this is just a summary of some of the things we've been talking about. And this is also a part of the previous a couple of webinars that I just want to bring back here, just to close that loop. So with this, we've had a couple of people who've had to drop out. So I don't know that we have many other questions here. Um, and so if you do have any questions, please share. But I do have questions you've already posted in advance. So many of you had shared some on registration. And so one question was, are there any variants or forms of human intelligence or role or synthetic roles? Right now, technically, experimentally, yes. But in terms of reliability, in terms of something that is ready for prime time, higher stakes practices, I would say no. Yes, we have chat bots that can be designed to conduct basic interviews and so forth. So that's on the one end. That is the collections end. But we also have on the other side where people are using synthetic data to be able to help generate intelligence. And that is not a replacement for that human expert who is the observer, right? Who also has tacit knowledge. So I would say that in this regard, we're further away. But when we get to the point of world models, that is going to start to shift. It's still not going to be a one-to-one replacement, just because of the reasons we talked about, right, the tacit and so forth. But it will get us closer to thinking about alternative thinking, right, and different linchpins and pathways. So that will change the nature of intel. And so folks like Jan LeCun, formerly of Meta, Fei Li, and others, NVIDIA, of course, they've been working in digital twins and now world models for many years now. So that's what to look out for, and it can affect human intelligence. And then I can't answer this, how many have been cut off from staff, but I think this is still a question for us to hold and to observe. How can we use AI to enhance our primary research? It's a great question, and I hope that looking at the Claude assessment helps us understand that a little bit. We can certainly drill more deeply into the nuts and bolts of that, and perhaps we will in a future session if you're interested. But I think for this session, it's really important to define more broadly and at a higher level where human intelligence is and where it could be going and what we can do about that. And then I hope we've answered some of this here. We didn't go into too much detail, but I think we've illustrated that. For number 5, what are the scenarios? We did that in webinar 1 of the series. So if you're interested in looping back to that, please revisit that. If you don't have the link for that, let me know and I'll send it to you. Number 6, in an environment focused on quantitative information, how do we sell human? That's a great question. I think we begin by defining what new human intelligence is, and specifically within your own practice, your own organization. So some of the ideas that we've talked about, by the way, they're not just ideas I'm pulling from thin air. I've worked on these with clients. So it's not that these are it's just vision, right? So the idea is that taking these ideas and expanding on them as a practice, and the way you present that, those arguments and the way that we've outlined, is to say that, here are the risks and vulnerabilities of AI. Here's what we've been missing. Here are the new opportunities. And this is what gets beyond the commoditization of AI. That becomes really, that AI presents, if we're overly relying on it, that is really important to how we sell human. So if we have to build awareness, we have to educate, we've got to basically present these use cases. And then number 7, how might one handle barriers to contact based on entrenched caste type systems and professional services? This particular question, I have more questions about before I can specifically answer it, because it really depends on that caste system, because there's a lot of sort of behavioral science behind this, or behavioral factors behind this. So if you ask this question, you're listening to this on recording, please reach out, because I have more questions for you before I can answer this one, because there's specificities behind it. But it's a great question. And then how should intelligence experts use AI in their work? I think this is ever evolving, and I think Fable 5 is sharpening, that this question. But we've got a skill. And as I mentioned in the past couple of webinars, it's not enough to achieve AI literacy anymore. We are at the level of AI fluency in order to keep the human in the loop. And most of us are just playing around with the literacy as a target. And I think a lot of the training that's out there is really focused also on that. They're not really thinking as deeply and as broadly and as further out as we need to be. So I think that's one of the things that these. So that's one thing is we need to be talking more about this. I'm just putting up here some audience observations. I won't be commenting on these necessarily, just so you can see what other people have reported out as I ask these questions upon registration. Just to wrap up, 10 points to keep ahead. Sorry. See past the hype and AI denialism. Both of them are distortions. We're hearing a lot of stuff in headlines or with very loud voices. We need to put intel into evaluating AI. And I don't think enough of us are necessarily doing that, even as we're practicing intel. Excuse me. And we need to achieve both intel and functional and AI fluency. It's cross functions now. So I won't lean into that, but I just want to underscore that point. Excuse me, I've got a bit of a cough. So sorry about that. It's very important we see the in-betweens, what people are missing, the gaps, the dependencies, again, that people are missing, limitations, issues. I can't underscore this enough. That's how we're going to keep redefining the new human intelligence. The new human intelligence is also about continual redefinition of that human intelligence. These new tools will come on to automate or to expand the AI capabilities. And so it's a moving target. It's exciting, it's frustrating, it's maybe stressful as well. But this is also our superpower. We can see in-betweens better than AI can. Let's lean into it. That also means we identify and expand into higher level work, and we make it known. I mentioned already the different kinds of intelligences that we need to be expanding into and bring it all together into an all-source intelligence that is human-led. That is the new human intelligence. Then we understand what AI can or cannot do, the risks and opportunities, and we keep up with that. As we do so, we continually focus on human needs because our stakeholders are irrational creatures, just as we are. That's the nature of biases and blind spots. So AI is not going to necessarily understand that very well. So as we continue to satisfy those needs and observe those behaviors, and satisficing is one of those, taking those mental shortcuts or the good enough. That's what we're up against, and we need to be thinking about that. Then we use our human capabilities to be able to fill those gaps, to be able to fill those blind spots, to educate. And that's number 7. And then taking all of this, start defining how you're going to promote yourself. If you're going to rewrite your job description and incorporate an expanded human intelligence role into the broader intelligence practice, not just for interviews and so forth, how would you do that? Where are your opportunities in the marketplace, in your own organization? What is the vision that you have that you can also introduce to your team, that you can introduce into your own organization for decision support? What types of practices can you expand on? And you create, you educate, you lead. And embrace complexity and the unconventional. That's one way to do this, is to be able to see that in between. And then you can redefine that to achieve more clarity for your stakeholders. Then finally, expand and shift your mindset. It's ongoing adaptation. Too many of us are too used to being lone wolves. We're doing it alone. And yeah, it might suit some of our personalities or just the nature of intel work, but it doesn't work in this new environment. It's all hands on deck. It's a collaboration. So reach out to people, gain support, learn more, learn with each other. It's particularly important that we do this. Otherwise, we remain isolated especially as other organizations are pouring billions into this, and most of us do not have those resources to do that. So with that, I hope that this gives you some ideas about where you might be able to define your next steps. And if you need support with that too, reach out to Claudia or me, because we have been thinking about this, and certainly some of you already know I've been developing various models and so forth towards this. But the new human intelligence is that Gen AI creates new opportunities to redefine it. Human intelligence expands opportunities and traditional practices. It's also overarching, and it's in a faceted human layer. It's not the traditional. So think about what facets align with you that your organization needs that help to solve your organization's intel or decision problems. Start from there. The new human intelligence still will remain beyond AI if we're able to do this. If we're not able to do this, we will be supplanted by AI, or at least in the eyes of decision makers. And this is where our intel roles and insight roles and knowledge roles really become vulnerable. So this is not intelligence as we've known it, but I find that really exciting. And I look forward to exploring more of this with you. And certainly, if you do need more support along these lines of thinking, we're more than happy to help. And we've got the new webinars coming up too. The next one is harnessing Delphi and advisory panels. So the way we're doing it is a funnel. I feel if you've been following us from the first webinar out. And so we're going to be doing a deeper dive into that particular segment to illustrate what we've been discussing. So we're going to be getting more applied, but we have to target something. So this is what I want to target, because I want to target something that people have been underutilizing that also has some firm boundaries. And we've also got a virtual workshop coming up, conducting the intelligence audit and AI transitions. And this is also an insights or knowledge audit and various types of audits, right? Looking at this for AI transitions. So we're going to be looking at that more specifically for that workshop. And then there are decision circles that are forming. Our practice community will be coming online, so we can have more of these kinds of conversations and collaborations to advance our practices in the ways that we've been discussing. And we've got videos that we're posting on YouTube, and we're also on LinkedIn. So please don't hesitate to join us for any of these things, and reach out to Claudia and me. Claudia's contact information is here, and as is mine. And thank you so much for being a part of this conversation, or if you're listening to this recording, listening, to some of these ideas. I look forward to your thoughts on this. So if you want to post in the comments, or if you are listening to this in the recording, or just shoot us a note, or join us in a future conversation that we're going to have, please do join us. Thanks so much.